Okay, so this video is going to cover making charts using Datawrapper. Everything we talk about in this video is also covered by the textbook in chapter 6 underneath the Datawrapper charts section, and we're going to be making 3 charts that they cover. An annotated line chart, just like this one, you can see it's interactive here. A range chart, which it's not interactive in the actual body of the chart, but you can still click around and download the data from there. And finally, a bubble chart. This chapter covers both scatter and bubble charts. It's basically 2 versions of the same chart. We're going to make the bubble chart version of it. So you can scroll down and follow the instructions for the bubble chart version. Okay? So to start, you actually need to go to the annotated line chart section and then click on this in step 1, open the sample data. That's going to open up the data for you in Google Sheets, and just like the title says, we're going to need to go to File and make a copy. You've done this before, right? So you'll be able to do that no problem. Once you have your own copy, you'll be able to use this data in Datawrapper. So the next step is to go to datawrapper.de and you can log in. You should have an account already. You can also just start creating without having an account if you want to. And now we're going to connect our Google Sheet here. In order to make sure that the URL works, we have to make sure to enable sharing, right? So just like I always say, you need to make sure to change your share settings by clicking on that share button. And don't just share with FIU, share with anyone with the link, okay? And having viewing permissions should be just fine, like this defaults after clicking anyone with the link. So let's go ahead and copy this link, go back to Datawrapper and paste it in to see if it's valid. You can see it's valid because both of these green check marks were enabled. Then you can click on Proceed, and now we're in the section where we can start to visualize. First, we need to make sure our data is okay. It has automatically detected that we have a date column and a numeric column for the unemployment rate, so this looks good. We can click on Proceed. And now it has automatically guessed that we probably want a line chart for this data, and it is absolutely correct. A line chart is the most adequate to show change over time, so this is a good selection for us. Next, we can go ahead and click on this Refine tab, and this is where we're going to start to personalize and edit the chart so that it becomes even more optimized. So the first thing you might want to do is think about the vertical axis. This unemployment rate doesn't really dip below, let's say, 3. So we can change the minimum value for that vertical axis to have a minimum value of 3 if we wanted to. Or if we want to be extra safe, we could put it at 2. You can do this for a line chart because we're not encoding by length, so it's totally fine. You can also change the way that grid lines are shown or not shown. And you can include tick marks if you want to for the years. Okay, so the next thing you might want to do is change the color of the line, right? They give you some line colors to choose from, so you can change it there. You can also change the colors under the Layout tab if you just change the entire theme here. So for example, maybe you want a dark background and light colors for this page flow theme, or maybe you want the high contrast theme. Any of these are fine. You can go ahead and choose the one that you like the best. We also want to give this a title. So you can add the title in the Annotate section, or you can directly type on the chart. We want to give this a meaningful title that tells us what we're looking at. So we could say something like, the unemployment rate in the United States spiked during the COVID-19 pandemic, right? That's a clear takeaway that we can see from this chart, because right here at around 2019 to 2020, the unemployment rate gets really high. In our description, This is where we can add more context for the data. So we can go back to the book chapter and say, hey, where was this from? This is U.S. Federal Reserve data. We can explain that this is seasonally adjusted from 2000 to 2020. And this is just going to make it so that there's even more information for a reader here. This would also make it possible for us to remove the "in the United States" portion of our title, because now in our description we're saying this is United States unemployment. As you can see, the description didn't really update. If that happens to you, that's just something that happens sometimes. You can go back to the check and describe step 2 and then click on step 3 again. It will have saved all your changes. And now those changes actually show up here. So you'll be able to see that more easily. Okay? What else? You'll need to add your name in the byline section. Make sure to add that every single time. And you're always going to want to add the data source. This is really crucial. So the data source is, in this case, like I said, the U.S. Federal Reserve Open Data. And you can just copy the link that they provide in the chapter if you open it up. Oh, this is actually their spreadsheet. We want the original location. Here we go, the Federal Reserve Open Data website. This is what we want. So this is further down underneath step 6. So let's go ahead and copy this and put this in the link section. And then we can write exactly what they wrote. U.S. Federal Reserve Open Data. Where is it? Here we go. U.S. Federal Reserve Open Data. All right, pretty good. Now the alternative description can be either your title or your description. Just make sure that you always include something there for those who are using screen readers. Okay? Not too bad so far, not too shabby. We're going to want to add 2 text annotations and 2 range highlights to finish up our annotated line chart. So first, let's add our first text annotation right around here. And this first spike is going to represent, let's move this down actually. This represents the Great Recession, as it's frequently called. And you can change all of the settings of this, whether it's bold or not, what color you want the text to be, in the settings for the tooltip itself. And you can always go back and you can remove the line break if you want to. Okay, so this is good. By the way, you can draw a line and move this line anywhere you want. So this is kind of like the traditional annotation with an arrow. But if you, and you can make it curved, right? But what we're going to do in this case is, instead of drawing the line, we're going to add a range highlight to go with it. But just know that it's an option to draw a line to match that. Okay, let's add one more text annotation. And this is going to be for the COVID-19 pandemic. Over here. And let's go ahead and make the styling kind of match the other one that we have. Oops, not green. There we go. Pretty good. And now we're ready to add our range highlights. Let's add the first one here from about 2000, a little bit before 2008 to 2009, like this. And we can move our label to kind of match that more precisely. We can also make this centered a little bit, like this, if we want to. All right, and let's add one more range highlight for COVID-19 pandemic over here, which is ongoing, right? But you can just highlight the region where the spike is. By the way, you can make these sections any color you want. It's really up to you. And you can make it more or less transparent depending on how you want it to look. Okay? So I'll leave that up to you to set that up however you want. Once you have your name, your data source, the data itself, your title, and a description, then you're ready to publish. All you got to do is click Publish and Embed. And once it's finished publishing, you'll be able to copy that link and either put it directly into a Medium article, for example, or share it anywhere on the internet. So let's wait for this to publish. It's going to take a second. Give it one more shot here. Because this is a little slow, I'm going to click on proceed down here. See if that helps me out. Might just have to wait for it. Since we're waiting, by the way, in this layout section in the footer, you can add some options for people to download your chart either as the data or as an image. Again, this is optional, so you can add it if you want to. It's up to you. Okay, I'm going to just refresh this page. I think it froze. As you can see, it saved all my changes, so it's really not a problem. Okay, so you can export as a PNG, that's fine, but we want to publish the interactive version. So I'm going to click on publish. And now this is the link right here. As you can see, you can choose either visualization only or for sharing. If you click on for sharing, it's going to be like a nicer version with the Datawrapper header. If you click on visualization only, it's going to be something that expands to fit your entire screen, okay? So this visualization only link is what you would use on Medium, but either of the two links are fine for you to turn it in, okay? Great, so let's go ahead and make our next chart. In this case, the next chart you'll see in the book is the range chart. And once again, we have some open data to use, and it has been shared in Google Sheets. Once we click on this US earnings by gender in Google Sheets link, then you'll see the spreadsheet, and you can file, make a copy in your own drive, okay, close the other one, and once again, we're going to want to share this. Change the share settings so that it's not only university people who can view it, anyone with the link can view. Copy the link, done. Go back to Datawrapper, create a new chart. It's kind of the same as before. Connect to Google Sheet, paste that, make sure these are both green, and proceed. Okay, all of this looks good. We've got educational attainment for men and women, and these numbers represent the, I believe, salaries or earnings. Let's see. Median earnings in dollars, I believe yearly. So that's interesting. Okay, we're going to proceed here. And it's trying to give us a line chart here. A line chart is not the appropriate type of visualization in this case. We could use maybe a bar chart or bullet bars, but in this case, we're going to try out the range plot, which is a perfectly good choice for this kind of data. Because we're comparing basically two categories across all of these other categories of educational levels. Okay, so let's give this a title. Women's earnings are behind men's at every educational level. Or you could say the pay gap exists at every educational level. Make it nice and snappy. Okay, and then what you want to do is label the first range. That's under the Refine section, Labels. You can go ahead and click on Label First Range. Okay, that way we know which color represents which. You can also decide, since there's a few different options here for visibility of the values, to show a difference between what women earn and what men earn, or a percent change. Or you could show either the start or the end values, or both, of the different earning levels. I believe in the textbook what they did is they have both here, but they have abbreviated it. So let's go ahead and try putting both here, and then change the number format to be abbreviated. Okay, that makes it easier to read. All right, this looks pretty good. I like to enable the gradient option for these kinds of charts. I think it looks interesting, but you can also choose any of these values that you want. You can also change the colors if you want, up to you. I kind of like it like this. And you have the option, by the way, these are in order already, but you have the option to force them to be in a different order if you want to, like putting the largest difference at the top, or the smallest to largest, or the percent change, right? So just play around with those options. I think from smaller educational levels to larger is totally fine. Okay, now what we want to do is make sure to, in the annotate section, put our name here, put the data source, which in this case is the U.S. Census American Community Survey for 2019. And we want to make sure to put that original link here, not the spreadsheet link. Personally, I prefer the original website. It looks like they haven't given it to you, but you can just go ahead and Google U.S. Census 2019 Community Survey. You've already worked with the census, and you can copy the census page for that. Okay, let's put that as our link, and we can go back and then forward to see those changes kind of take effect. I think this is pretty good. You could also add a description. It's a good practice to do so. And what you could do here is provide more context. In 2019, the U.S. Census recorded median earning information for survey respondents. It was median, right? Median earnings in US dollars for people 25 plus. And then it's actually done a little bit of analysis here for this description. At all education levels, men's earnings are about 1.5x higher. So we can use this description to explain, well, oops, that's the other chart, explain even further. Recorded median earning information in US dollars, 25 plus. Okay, so this looks pretty good. With this, we're ready to proceed. We don't need to highlight anything on this one or annotate with arrows on this one. Proceed, publish now, and once you get that link, you can turn it in or copy and paste it into Medium to automatically generate a interactive version of this. Alrighty, so last but not least, we have our bubble chart. I'm going to scroll down here to the bubble chart section of the chapter, and you're going to see we're going to look at fertility, life expectancy, and population in nations. I actually have this scatter plot sample data already open over here. So I'm just going to click on File, Make a Copy, Copy to My Drive, and Share as usual. Change this to anyone with the link. Oops, I don't think that happened. Let's change this again. Anyone with the link. Copy the link, go to Datawrapper, start creating, and our third chart is going to be ready to go. All right, this is valid. Sharing is enabled. Click on Proceed. Proceed again after checking everything looks good. It always wants to make a line chart, but this is not a line chart situation. So let's make a scatter plot first, and then we can refine and improve. So in order to make this based on bubbles, we need to check the little toggle next to variable for size and then select population so that each bubble is sized by the population that we have here. I believe that's how they did it here. Yeah, and they have fertility and life expectancy. However, as you can see, these bubbles are still really small. So let's go ahead and make these nice and big for the maximum size so that they are visible. Okay, you could also change the shapes, by the way, if you wanted to, just a fun little detail. I think we don't need to do that in this case. Okay, and then we can change the colors here too. So you could check the box for customize colors, and then you could change the colors for each of these so that we have different options. You also don't need to show the color key, by the way. So if you wanted to highlight just a few countries, you would be able to do that. But you can also give every single country its own color. And if you want to, you can play around with the colors using these sliders. And so on and so forth. Okay, so you can do that. You could also have the colors be by region if you wanted to. Africa, Asia, Europe. Oh, Africa didn't save. Europe and North America, for example. That's one way to do it. And you don't need to choose the default colors that they have here. You can, play around with this, like I said. So anyway, that's something that you can add as an additional little feature here. Okay, so you can turn the grid on and off here. You can add just the lines here. Okay, so play around with all of these options so that you get used to them for both of the axes. Just keep in mind that those options exist. Okay, so now if we mouse over one of these bubbles, you'll notice nothing actually shows up. Whereas in the textbook's version, some information shows up when we put our mouse over it. That's what we want. So let's go ahead and give this a title first of all. Let's go ahead and say the lower the fertility rate, the higher the life expectancy, because that's what we can see on this chart. And we always want to add some kind of description to provide more context, right? So this data comes from the World Bank, but we don't know what, well, we can see in the original that it's from 2018, but the version that we have now, we don't know what year it is. So we could say here, data from the World Bank, 2018. Let's see if there's a particular kind of study that they did. I want to see the original page here. This has to do with life expectancy. Okay, so this is actually something that we can find from their spreadsheet. As you know, you should always include the data source in another tab. So they've done that. This is probably the easiest way for us to get that page. I'm going to go ahead and copy this link because we're going to need it for our data source over here. You can go ahead and put World Bank here too. And then we can say, okay, these are called the World Development Indicators. So we can put that in the subtitle or the description as well. Okay? Just add as much information as you can. I'm going to go back and then go forward again to see that take effect. Oh, and don't forget to add your name as well, who created the chart, you did, and the alternative description for screen readers. Alrighty, this looks pretty good. Just like before, you can add text annotations or range annotations. But first, let's go ahead and fix these tooltips. The tooltips are the little squares that show up with information, right? So in order to fix this, you're going to want to add customized tooltips here. And the title is going to be the name of the country. So you just need to click on this country button. And then here, we need to add a label for each of the variables we want to include. So let's go ahead and add one for life expectancy. We type that out by hand, then click life expectancy. Let's add one for fertility and add that. And then finally population and add that. Now When I click outside of this box and I mouse over, I can see that I have some information here. However, all of these are trying to be on the same line. In order to make sure that they're on different lines, you can add a little HTML break element after each one. And you can also add one between the title and the rest of the text. Let's take a look. Oh, that's pretty large, actually, that space between the title and the rest. Maybe we can remove that. But the rest of this looks pretty good. Yeah, something like that. Not bad. You can also add things like units here if you wanted to. So you could write years, right, for the life expectancy, and so on. That looks pretty good. Now let's go ahead and add just one little text annotation with, let's go ahead and point out that this one with the highest life expectancy is Japan. So let's add a text annotation here. We can write Japan has the highest life expectancy. Make this a little wider. Maybe a little bit less than that. And then let's add a line to that, draw a line with a little arrow. And let's switch these around. Let's put the arrow next to Japan and then move the text up here. We'll put this a little bit closer. Okay, I think this looks pretty good. We could even make this color match if we wanted to, but it's kind of hard to read. Yeah, and with that, you're ready to publish. You can see I have a little error down here that says this isn't very good for red-green color blindness, and that's because we have this reddish next to this green one. To see how it would look, you can see what it would look like for someone with that particular form of color blindness. If you wanted to make sure to fix that, you can go back to the refine section and change these colors. If you make some of them brighter and some of them less bright, that's an easy way to fix it. Let's go ahead and see here. But if you don't have all of these kind of standardized, that's okay too, as long as it's fairly close to being optimized. I'm going to go ahead and try and standardize this a little bit more, like this. Maybe make this a little more purple. Let's see how that is. I think you can kind of tell the difference now. It's pretty good. That's good in my view. All right, and then finally, publish and embed. Publish now. I'm going to take this opportunity to show you how to embed in Medium. So you can just copy this link, go to medium.com, start typing your article, right? Let's write one, write an article. And then if you paste that link and hit enter, it will bring in your interactive chart, and this will actually be something that you can click on and mouse over when you publish, okay? So just keep that in mind for when you use Datawrapper for your final story.